Hello everyone, welcome to Tammy's Kitchen. Well, we're back at it today and we're going to pay tribute to one of my very favorite things in the world, my son Ryan. I'm going to be making all of Ryan's favorite dishes today on the show. He likes Fettuccine Alfredo, homemade rolls, and the Hershey Sundae Pie that they have at Burger King. So I've replicated that recipe a little bit to his liking, and today on the show I'm going to make all of his favorites for you. So stick with us and we're going to get cooking in the kitchen. We're going to start the show today with a hot roll recipe, and this is one that's perhaps pirated, if you will. This is the Texas Roadhouse roll recipe. I've made it at home before and it's a big favorite. So in my mixing bowl here, I'm going to start with 1 package of yeast, a half a teaspoon of sugar, and 1/4 cup of warm water. And I usually just let this set for just a few minutes to let that yeast kind of soak up the water. Okay, then to that, we're going to add a cup of scalded milk. So I've heated the milk on the stove and it's cooled off a bit. You don't want to pour it in there, scalding hot. It's supposed to cool to lukewarm before you add it to your yeast mixture. So I'm going to grab that off the stove and we'll pour it in our bowl. I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. And I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of flour. That is bread flour. You can use regular flour, but I think, as I've said on here before, I prefer the consistency that the bread flour gives your rolls. I've got the dough hook attachment on my mixer, and we're just going to mix that up until it's combined. I'm going to scrape the sides of my bowl down. Some of that flour is sticking. Okay, our dough is combined and we are to let this set for about 8 to 10 minutes until it becomes kind of foamy. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to melt some butter, get my bowl ready to put our dough in. So you've got a few steps you can do while you're waiting for this to kind of rise up a little bit. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes and you can see this is kind of puffed up a little bit and maybe looks just a little bit foamy. So that's how you know it's ready to continue on with your recipe. Okay, now we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So I've melted 1.5 tablespoons of butter. Got 1 egg that I've beaten just slightly. And 1 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to turn our mixer back on, get that incorporated. We're going to start adding the rest of our flour now, and I turn the mixer down on low. You're just supposed to kind of slowly incorporate it until you have a soft dough. One thing you have to be careful of when you're making bread, and that is don't put too much flour in it. It will make your rolls heavy and they won't be light and airy like you want them to be. Your dough may seem really sticky, but that makes the best rolls, so. Okay, we have the flour added, and the recipe calls for you to dump this out on a flour board and knead it for 8 to 10 minutes. Well, you can do that. I don't. I'm just going to use my mixer to knead the dough. It does a fantastic job, and I don't have all the mess on the counter, so it won't take nearly as long to knead it with the mixer as it does by hand. So I just kind of eyeball it. When it looks smooth and elastic, then I stop it and we'll put it in our bowl to raise. Ooh. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, we've kneaded our dough and it looks smooth and elastic like it should, so I'm going to dump it into this greased bowl. And you can either spray your bowl with cooking spray or just grease it with a little bit of olive oil. I just greased it with a little bit of olive oil, spread it around my bowl. As you can see, my dough is pretty sticky, and as I said, that's really how you want it. Okay, now flip your dough over once it's in the bowl so that it gets coated on all sides, basically. Okay, we're going to cover this with some plastic wrap and we're going to set it in a warm place to rise. It'll take at least an hour for it to raise. You want it to raise until it's doubled. While the bread's raising, we're going to move on with our second recipe of the day, and that's going to be the Hershey Sundae Pie. So I've got just a store-bought Oreo crust here, and we're going to stir up some pudding. And this is just a small package of pudding. And I'm going to add 1.5 cups of milk. And we'll just whisk this together. Try to get the lumps out. Okay, and I'm going to set that to the side so that it can set up for a couple minutes. It's going to thicken up as it stands. And we'll work on our second layer, which is 1 package of cream cheese. This is the 8-ounce package. So we're going to beat that. To that, I'm going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar. Okay, that's about 1 cup of Cool Whip. And to that we're going to add, this is 1 square of semi-sweet chocolate that I have melted in the microwave. Ryan loves chocolate, so this is like chocolate overload almost. Turn my mixer down to low. We don't want to beat this anymore. We just kind of want to fold it in. That looks pretty good. Okay, as you can see, the pudding's thickened up. So we're going to add that as our first layer. Then we're going to add our cream cheese. I tried a version of this, and Ryan said, well, it was okay, but it wasn't quite like the kind that you got at Burger King. So I made this one on the second attempt, and he said, yeah, that's pretty close. So I've stuck with this one. Okay. We're just going to frost the top with the rest of the Cool Whip. Okay, now just to make it pretty, I'm going to melt some chocolate in the microwave and just drizzle over the top of our Cool Whip. I'll give the top of it just a little bit of crunch too when that chocolate sets up. This is actually like chocolate almond bark, so it's going to set up hard, so it'll add a little crunch whenever you bite into that top. And I believe that's the same way that the Burger King pie is. It has chocolate or something on the top of it, so hopefully I've gotten it just right so that, you know, I don't want to be outdone by Burger King. Okay, I think that's enough. I think that'll look pretty good. Put this in the fridge and let it chill for probably a couple hours just so that everything kind of sets up and molds together. So we're going to pop that into the fridge. We'll check on our bread and we'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, our dough has raised up really nicely, so it's ready to proceed with the next step. And the next thing you do is punch it down, which is just exactly what it indicates. Stick your fist through it. And I see I got bread dough all over my ring. That's not going to be good, but I've got a floured board here. It's not really a board. It's a little piece of plastic stuff. But we're going to roll our dough in this flour. And with our rolling pin, we're going to flatten it out into a rectangle. Okay, and then we're going to fold it in half. We're just kind of seal the edges of that so that it stays together. Okay, and then we're going to let it rest for 10 minutes, just like this. Okay, our dough has rested, so now it's time to cut these into hot rolls. So I have a dough scraper here, and we're just going to kind of eyeball this. This makes big rolls. So you can cut these whatever size, however big you want them to be. But I make this into 12 rolls. And some of them are going to be bigger than others. Ryan actually always wants the biggest roll, so these on this side will be his because they'll be big. Okay, and then after we've gotten them cut, and this dough is really sticky, and we're just going to put them on a greased cookie sheet. Okay, I've got a damp paper towel here, and I'm just going to cover our cookie sheet with it and put these back in a warm place to raise. Probably take about an hour or so, and then we'll pop them into an oven to bake. So looking forward to having those. My stomach's growling. Okay, our last dish of the day is going to be Ryan's Fettuccine Alfredo. So I've got a pot of boiling water here, and we're just going to add this package of fettuccine. And we will need to add some salt. Let that get going. And in my saucepan, I've got a stick of butter that we're going to melt. And to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of cream cheese. I'm using the softened kind that comes in a dish that's spreadable. It'll just melt a little faster. You can cut it off the brick if you want, but you know, that's a little bit harder, and this will break up just a little bit faster. I think maybe I've mentioned this before, but I don't like al dente pasta. I know that's how you're supposed to cook it, but I really want mine to be done. I don't want to have to gum it to death. So I may cook this for longer than what you think I should, but that's totally up to you. If you like yours al dente, then you by all means fix it that way. But I'm going to cook mine until it's done. So you know, Ryan actually came home with this recipe from school. He took a class, a FACS class, Family and Consumer Sciences class, last semester, and one of the segments was learning how to cook, and this was one of the recipes that they made, and he really loved it, so I tried it at home, and it is excellent. It's actually one of the best white sauces I've ever had, so we've been making it quite a bit. Ryan's a very particular eater, so there are really only a few things that I can make for him that he enjoys. So this is one of them, and like I said, we've had it several times. So I think you'll like it too if you try it. Okay, our cream cheese is broken down in there. You can see it's all melted together with the butter. And to that, we're going to add a pint of heavy cream. This recipe is not on the diet plan, but it is very, very tasty. So a pint of heavy cream, and then we're going to add a teaspoon of garlic powder. And this is powder, not salt, so be sure you grab the right bottle out of the cupboard before you pour that in there. Salt would make it unedible. I think that would just be a little too overboard on the salt. So, okay, so we're whisking that together, and this is going to simmer for about 15 or 20 minutes. So while this is simmering and our pasta's cooking, I'm going to give that a stir here. We're going to go check on our bread to see if it has risen enough to put in the oven. I will tell you not to walk off and leave your pasta sauce. You do need to stir it pretty regularly, if not all the time. So you don't want it to stick on the bottom. Okay, our bread is looking good. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in the oven, 350 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, we're continuing to stir our sauce here, and we're going to add just a little bit of salt and pepper just to taste, however much or little you like. So I didn't put in a whole lot of salt. The garlic powder will season it quite a lot. And you can always add salt at the table if it's not quite to your taste. So we've popped the bread in and this is looking good. So we'll just let this simmer for a few minutes. Our bread is out of the oven and it smells really, really good. So I'm going to brush the tops of these with some melted butter and a little bit of sugar. If you've had the hot rolls at Texas Roadhouse, you know that they are very sweet, and I'm not sure exactly how they get them that way, but I'm sure going to give this a try and see how it works. Ryan should be very happy with those rolls there on that side because they're huge. These smell wonderful, so. Okay, I think our fettuccine is also done. So I'm going to take our noodles off the stove and drain those. And the last thing that we're going to add to our sauce is 2/3 of a cup of Parmesan. So we'll stir that in. And I'll take our pan to the stove and get our noodles drained. Well, we've got all of Ryan's favorites completed here today. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and if you'd like to have any of our recipes, please email us at recipes@sheratonvalley.com. Ryan's the love of my life, so make something for your family tonight, and they'll remember you fondly. So until next time, I'll see you around the valley.